Hello and welcome to another video, University of Gallifrey Lesson 2. In this video we're going to take a minute and we're going to explain some major things that will become very important very soon when we start talking about the history of the Time Lords and how the Time Lords became what they are today. And the first person we're going to talk about Rassilon. If you haven't heard of Rassilon, then you're at a major disadvantage, because not only is he one of the most important Time Lords in the history of Gallifrey, but he's also seen in the newer series as well as the classic series. In the new series, he was shown in the episode The End of Time. Now, one thing that I guess with the End of Time is that they apparently brought him back for the Time War, which would make sense. I mean, he was a pretty high ruler on Gallifrey. He's really the guy who invented the technology that allowed the Time Lords to have time travel, but his role was really connected with Omega, and we'll talk about him in just a minute. Now, he's given the credit for the creation of the Eye of Harmony. We'll also go into that in just a few minutes if you don't know what the Eye of Harmony is. But in Time Lord society nowadays, there's a few... Rassilon is so important that there are several things that are held by the Lord President of Gallifrey, including the Sash of Rassilon, the Crown of Rassilon, which gives the Lord President access to the Matrix. Again, we'll talk about that in just a minute too. There's the Key of Rassilon, which is only known to the Chancellor on Gallifrey, I believe. That's the Key of Rassilon. And then there's the Rod of Rassilon. It's referred to as the Great Key, but don't get that confused with the Key of Rassilon. They are two different things. Completely two different things. Another... I guess it's not that important, but there's the Harp of Rassilon, which is seen in Doctor Who and the Five Doctors during Peter Davidson's tenure as the Doctor. Now, in the classic series, Rassilon is already dead. He's been dead for quite some time, because he was really in the very, very beginning. He was the very first Lord President of Gallifrey. Now we're going to take a step back and we're going to talk about Omega. Omega is extraordinarily important to Time Lord society. He's really the person who created the Eye of Harmony. He came up with the technology to collapse a star into a black hole and harness that black hole's energy for use through traveling through the time vortex. And that's really where the Eye of Harmony kicks in, because Omega and Rassilon together, using the hand of Omega, created a black hole that is known as the Eye of Harmony, that resides outside of time with Gallifrey, which helps power all TARDISes within the known universe and parallel universes around. His first appearance was in the Doctor Who and the Three Doctors. After his death at the creation of the Eye of Harmony, he was pulled into a world of antimatter. So he wasn't really dead, but in that, I don't want to give too much away in case you really want to watch Doctor Who and the Three Doctors. I would highly recommend it, because it really gives you a lot of good information about Omega and what happened to him. And I think the last time you see Omega is in the Arc of Infinity. Yeah, so that's Omega. There's another character that we're going to talk about here that really in-depth Doctor Who fans know a lot about, and this guy's name is the Other. He doesn't have any other name. He's in a triad with Omega and Rassilon, and those three really helped create the Time Lord Society. He's mentioned in the fifth and seventh Doctor, fifth and seventh Doctor, I believe. Now, the Other is not... We're not quite sure if the Other is actually from Gallifrey, and we don't know if he's actually a Time Lord. But he was definitely there when the creation of the Eye of Harmony and the beginning of the Time Lord race. and those three helped bring down the this cult. Let me see if I can. I'm gonna try and pronounce it here. I mean, I'm terrible at pronunciation, so if I don't get this right, Panthea, the cult of Panthea, which was the ruling order on Gallifrey before the Time Lords, and it was mostly a matriarch society, meaning run by women, and that cult held power over Gallifrey for quite some time, and it wasn't until Rassilon, Omega, and the other took over Gallifrey from the cult. There's something that the cult did to every Gallifreyan on the planet Gallifrey, and that is to make them sterile, meaning that no natural born Gallifreyans never to be born on Gallifrey again. And I don't know if over the ages they eventually overcame this or just drove it out of their culture, because I know we'll go into reproduction stuff, but this cult, right before the formation of the Time Lords, made every Gallifreyan on Gallifrey sterile. So what Rassilon did, and I'll go more in detail on this in another video, but what Rassilon did is he created this machine that weaved Time Lord DNA, creating Time Lords from creating Time Lords out of matter, antimatter, and energy, adding a third strand to their DNA, which actually allows them to regenerate. Gallifreyans already have a very long life expectancy of hundreds of years, but when Rassilon added that third strand, then they were able to regenerate. Gallifreyans weren't able to regenerate up until this looming machine was created by Rassilon. So that's where most Time Lords come from. Any Time Lord, I'm just gonna go on a limb here, any Time Lord that's natural born, if that's even possible, because they're sterile. If any Gallifreyan or Time Lord was to be born, they would have a life expectancy of hundreds of years, but they would not retain their ability to regenerate. And I guess that's the main part. Again, I'm going to go into a lot of that other stuff in detail. I just really wanted to get those things out of the way. And then one other thing about the other that, again, I can go into more detail later on if you want me to, but the other, right when Rassilon was taking over Gallifrey, harnessing the power of the black hole and the Eye of Harmony to create the Time Lord civilization, the other decided to do something. He ensured. Okay, let me back up here for a second. Okay, Omega, right before Omega, and we'll go more in depth on his history in another video if you want. Omega had a wife named Patience. This was before Gallifrey was sterile, so they were together, and then right when Omega died and was transcended into the world of antimatter, the other and Patience had a granddaughter. Now, well, they had kids, and eventually they had a granddaughter, and most of you would know the granddaughter if you've seen the classic series or read on the classic series as Susan from the very first William Hartnell era, right at the very beginning of Doctor Who. And that's Susan. That's the other and Patience's granddaughter. Now, right before the other got rid of him, right when Rassilon was taking over and the planet was becoming sterile, the other got Susan off of Gallifrey by sending her to another planet. It was to ensure that it was to ensure her safety. And then one last thing that he did in defiance against Rassilon rule was he committed suicide by throwing him into the looming machine, which rewove his genetic material and added a third strand to his DNA, and eventually, over the process of a couple thousand, maybe a million years or so, I don't know exactly how long, he was brought back out as a loom in another house on Gallifrey during the Time Lords, and he became the one Time Lord that everybody knows and loves as the Doctor. The Doctor was the other. they're the same person. The other went into the Louis machine, got rewoven, and became the Doctor. And then many years after the Doctor did his thing on Gallifrey, went through the Time Lord Academy, and right when he stole his Type 40 TARDIS, he discovered the Hand of Omega. Now, what he decided to do is the Hand of Omega allowed him to travel into Gallifrey's past. So what he did is that the Doctor went back into Gallifrey's past with the Hand of Omega and found Susan wandering the streets of some city. I don't know if it's on Gallifrey or another. Oh, she never made it to the spaceport on Gallifrey. So she's wandering around in the city on Gallifrey. The Doctor finds her, and then Susan somehow recognizes the connection and addresses him as grandfather. And neither of them saw any problem with it. It somehow felt right to both of them, and that's how Susan and the Doctor were traveling at the very beginning of Doctor Who. The Doctor is Susan's grandfather in a way because the other is the Doctor. The Doctor himself didn't have children, I don't think, because Gallifreyans are sterile. But I guess that puts a huge hole in the story for the new series with David Tennant when he during The Doctor's Daughter when he said that he was a father before. Well, I guess they're doing something wrong up in the writing department. But the Doctor, I guess the Doctor was a father because he somehow retains the memories of the other, and the other had like 13 kids. So I guess in a way the Doctor has had children. So I guess it's not wrong, but at the same time it's not correct. The rewoving of the other into the Doctor himself didn't have children, but the other did, and since they're the same person, I guess he did have children. That's really complicated, and I guess it makes sense somewhere along the line. But anyway, let's take a moment and back up and go talk about other important things that I wanted to get to in this video.